Hello and welcome to my Learn With Me Minifreak series. This is episode 4, Envelopes. So first, what is a Learn With Me series? A Learn With Me series is a series where you follow my end-to-end process in learning to get the best from a synthesizer. In this case, it is the Arturia Minifreak. So far, we've talked about the general feel of the synthesizer, the control paradigm, we've looked at the basic waves in the oscillator, and we've looked at the filter. Today, we're going to be looking at the envelopes. So, as we typically do, let's create an init patch. Let's set a quick timbre up here, and let me just do this blind. Let's use the second oscillator. Okay, so we have a basic sound there. The envelope that is routed to the amplitude is this ADSR envelope. So this is what we'll look at first. So as you'd expect, typical attack phase, decay phase into sustain, into the release. Nothing particularly unusual there, but there are a number of parameters which aren't immediately visible, which are in the sound edit section. So if we go sound edit envelope, we have, as I showed you previously, a way of routing that to the VCA. That's to say, make the sound louder when we have more velocity. But we have a retrigger mode. So retriggering mode, envelope continue. What does that mean? What that means is that wherever the envelope was in its phase, if that envelope gets used by another voice, instead of resetting down to 0 and starting the attack from 0, the attack will continue from wherever that is. So if, for example, you had a very long release and that envelope got reused, the attack may have very little distance to move before continuing. It's not super easy to demonstrate this except in some artificial circumstances, so I'm just going to leave it where it is for now. The other parameters change the curvature of the envelope stages. So one of them for attack, we have attack. That's quick attack. So slightly different tone that you can get there. Next, the decay curve, we have default or percussive. So percussive usually is dropping off more rapidly, and that same mode is available for the release phase. So we can have quick attack, which is actually also shorter, and then we can also have the percussive. So let's So you can hear that the percussive release, it drops quite rapidly, but then you get that long tail out there. So the notes seem to ring out quite quickly, but they drop quite quickly. And I quite like that tone. So the other the other envelope here, that's the main one going to the amplitude, is the cycling envelope. One thing to note with the cycling envelope is by default it's not routed to anything, so we can't actually hear it doing anything. In order to hear what's going on, what I'm going to do is close the filter, put a bit of resonance on, and then I'm going to route this cycling envelope to the filter. So you can hear no motion at the moment. I could turn this knob, as I demonstrated before, to bring this envelope to the filter. But what I'm going to do to illustrate them separately is bring the cycling envelope to the filter, which brings us to the mod matrix. I will talk about this in more detail in future, but for now, all you need to know is you can turn this knob, this encoder rather, select one of the intersections, in this case cycling envelope for cutoff, click it, and then I can turn. So you can hear that this envelope now is adjusting the filter cutoff. So unlike that, which has an attack, decay, sustain, and release phase, this only gives you access to a rise and fall, which can be thought of as attack and decay, but they have a function beyond that, which I will demonstrate. And then finally, we have a hold/sustain, depending on the mode that we're in. So the difference there is hold is an amount of time it will spend at the top in some of the phases. Sustain is a level, just like a regular ADSR. So when using this envelope, you can think of rise as attack in envelope mode, fall as both decay and release, and sustain as sustain. So this is something like an ADSR envelope. Let's listen to. So we can get that formanty sound by adjusting the attack. So we can hear that sudden drop off in the filter, or a more relaxed drop off. But what this filter this envelope has that one doesn't, is you can adjust the shape of the phases. So they have that either linear or quick rise, and you have that percussive or the default rise here in this mode. So now this is an ADSR envelope, so you just have a sort of binary switch between these configurations. But this is where some interest comes in. We have two other modes for this envelope. You have run mode, which is a free running mode. So free running means it's going to continuously run in the background. To demonstrate that, I'm going to turn the rise and the fall phases short, a little bit longer. So I think if you hear, when I repeatedly trigger this, you can hear that I'm not immediately always starting at the beginning of that rise. I'm starting at different points in the waveform. Additionally, the shape parameter, unlike in the ADSR style envelope, is continuously variable. So now you can hear a little tick because it's ramping up rapidly, versus now it's staying open for a long time, or in the middle we have linear, more like a triangle shape. So interesting options there. And as I mentioned, instead of sustain being a level of sustain, we get hold, which indicates how long it spends at the top of that cycle. And you can see, because it's free running, it doesn't reset when the sound onsets. Now if we put it in looping mode, the difference between looping and free running is, you hear it's the same every time. Because in looping mode, the oscillator is resetting, the envelope is resetting. And interestingly, because it's looping, it has a sound that's reminiscent of a delay, even though we're not using any effects. So maybe I'll try and lean into that a little bit. I think the intensity is a bit high here, so I'm going to go back to the mod matrix. I'm going to turn the intensity down a bit. Maybe I'll bring some envelope in. I think now, listening to the envelope shape, I would rather that the release curve not be so percussive. Okay, so I think that's just about everything that I wanted to demonstrate here. Hopefully you get a feel for the cycling envelope and how in looping mode and free running mode it can behave a lot like an LFO. On the subject of LFOs, I think LFOs will be the next section which we dive into in the next episode. So all that remains to be said is thank you very much for joining me today, and goodbye.